Hey everyone out there. Welcome to the Anchors of Hope. This is the second episode of my new podcast, and I am really excited. I'm really excited to be able to share, really not getting into politics, more just about life, living consciously, and every now and then I'm going to talk about something that has to do with education, like in this episode. Actually, I'm going to touch on an important topic that serves the Jewish communal world in day schools, in high schools, on college campuses, in our organizational agencies, and our day-to-day lives. Something that we've been talking about for the last 25 years, investing millions of dollars in workshops and pamphlets and talking points. Did you guess what it was? Do you know what it was? Can you imagine what this topic is? Yep. It's Israel advocacy. Israel advocacy started just about in its current form, just about 25 years ago in the year 2000, at about the time when the BDS, Boycott, Divestment, Sanctions campaign was launched on college campuses in North America, parallel to what is called the Second Intifada at the time, which was on the heels of the Oslo Accords, the peace accords that were supposed to take place. We won't get into why they didn't take place, but it didn't happen, and instead we got violence here in Israel, and we got anti-Israel, eventually anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic, anti-Zionist campaigns that bring us to this day. You want to know what's happening on college campuses? You want to know where the battle's actually being held? I mean, not only in Times Square and other places, and God forbid, synagogue shootings, which have taken place over the last couple of years, but they're actually happening on college campuses. There's a war that's taking place. There's a battle for the hearts and minds of our young people, our next generation. And Israel advocacy was launched in an attempt to push back on these anti-Israel sentiments, these campaigns, the BDS. The idea being that we needed to defend ourselves, we needed to defend our right to exist or explain our right to exist. We needed to provide student leaders with fellowships and seminars and workshops and pamphlets and fixed talking points. And 25 years later, many of us who have been in this field for so long, and I have certainly been in this field for over 25 years, will say and we'll all agree that it's failed. Israel advocacy has failed. Certainly, generally speaking, I mean, here and there you might get a win, but generally speaking, we have failed. We see where we are today, where campus sentiments are at its lowest as it regards Israel, where it's become an open field on Jews. It's anti-Semitic. It's no longer just anti-Israel, and so we failed. One of the approaches that I believe and I argue for, I believe we should be evolving towards, is a different approach. Less of a reactive approach, less of a defensive posturing approach, more towards a proactive diplomatic approach. The topic that I'm going to talk about is the notion of Israel advocates versus education diplomats. You see, while we taught our students to defend Israel, and we've prepared answers and pamphlets, the challenge is that advocacy in its traditional form doesn't support our students' effort to be in dialogue, to be active members in that world. Now, yes, there's violence at times and there's no talking or dialogue available when there's violence. But nonetheless, there is an opportunity for our students and our lay leaders out there to gain the skill sets to understand the value of diplomacy when it can be applied, and it sure can be applied. Because all our people know is to go out there and either fight or flight, either fight for our right to exist and throw out all of these prepared answers and points and facts and percentages, or just go, take the long way around the anti-Israel protest on campus, or just avoid the conflict. But there are opportunities for dialogue, absolutely. And I believe that, for the most part, people out there do want to hear what we might have to say. But the challenge is that we don't know what to say, and we don't have the skill set to talk about these nuanced realities, these complexities, that are taking place, these multiple narratives. So what is it about diplomats? What are the values and skill sets of diplomats? Think about what does it mean to be a diplomat, whether it's an actual professional diplomat from a country to a country, or whether it's being a diplomat in business negotiations or in some other scenario, right? What do diplomats do? They're active listeners. They have a semblance of cultural competency. They can engage respectfully in other perspectives. They have a nuanced approach to thinking. They can embrace complexity rather than provide simple answers, right? We can be in that space. Diplomats are bridge builders, right? So imagine education diplomats in the field of Jewish or Israel education in the world that we're in, right? Connecting Jewish values to universal concerns. We can do that. And then, of course, comes collaborative problem solving, seeking common ground. And in this case, I argue, seeking common ground without needing to abandon our particular principles. So let's take an example of what that might look like in a Jewish classroom, in a Jewish education classroom, in a school, right? So where the topic of, for example, the Camp David Accords, the peace process between Egypt and Israel in the late 70s, they don't need to just be taught as historical facts. They can be analyzed, for example, through a diplomatic strategy. You can have your students in the classroom do role-playing. Role-play the stakeholders. They can participate as part of that role-playing in a structured dialogue and use complexity to map and to visualize the competing narratives. What is each side saying? What is each side arguing for as part of that peace process in the Camp David Accords? And then, of course, learning to acknowledge the other's perspective doesn't mean you're abandoning your own. You see, Israel advocacy is a black and white approach. And sometimes that's needed, but not always. You got to be able to exist in that gray area, because in that gray area is where there is tremendous potential. Doesn't mean you need to abandon your own stance and identity. And these skills of diplomacy, they extend, of course, beyond Jewish studies. You can take it into your general studies courses, like model UN simulations, or ethics discussions that can connect Jewish values to global citizenship and peer mediation. For the schools out there, for the heads of schools listening or educators, you can create a school culture that values thoughtful engagement over reactive responses, over fighting, over debating for who is right and who is wrong. I want to take that approach and also apply it to what an Israel experience might look like. You've heard of Birthright Israel and high school in Israel, semesters abroad, and Masa for graduate students, and the multitude of missions that come to Israel. You can apply education diplomacy, the skill sets and the values, to these trips as well, rather than infuse it and anchor it in Israel advocacy so that our students can come back and fight and be proud. They can be proud and have conviction. And where needed, they can apply advocacy. But they also need to know how to be diplomatic. They also need to know how to be in dialogue and conversation and listen and talk and not have to abandon their stance and their confidence and their conviction in who they are. So, for example, a pre-trip experience, where often there's a workshop or a seminar talking about what they're going to see or experience in Israel. What if that pre-trip experience includes diplomatic skills workshops and a seminar? Maybe those seminars explore multiple narratives, not to undermine their connection, their particular Jewish connection, but to prepare students to encounter the gray areas with intellectual curiosity rather than defensive anxiety. Because who knows, we all know, here in Israel there are many perspectives, there are many narratives, there are many cultures, there are many identities and religions that exist here in Israel. So our students ought not be in shock when they are confronted with it. They need to know the truth. And that does not mean abandoning their Jewish identity, their relationship with the homeland, with Israel, and of course with Zionism, the national inspiration of Am Yisrael global Jewry. They can develop these diplomatic skills through authentic engagement and not filtered or black and white presentations. So how does this going to apply? You see, education diplomacy doesn't necessarily have to weaken Israel connections. In fact, it can make it more sophisticated. The relationship with Israel can be deeper, more invested, more sophisticated, and durable. Students will develop flexible frameworks that can withstand complexity rather than brittle defenses that can shatter at a challenging question. Students who are trained as education diplomats can become more persuasive than advocates because they are engaged authentically, because they have the wherewithal to navigate those difficult and challenging conversations. I mean, who's more convincing? Someone who's reciting talking points out of a pamphlet, or someone who's demonstrating deep understanding while maintaining their own values? I argue it's the latter every time. Diplomatic skills help students articulate why Jewish values matter by connecting them to universal human concerns. We are part and parcel of the global social fabric. We are global citizens nonetheless. This approach can strengthen rather than weaken Jewish identity by making it relevant to today's young people. And finally, I want to end with education diplomacy as an opportunity for a paradigm shift. A paradigm shift from a defensive advocacy, from a defensive reactionary posture, to a proactive engagement, from talking points to authentic dialogue, from either or thinking to both and complexity. It's in that gray area that we reach our greatest potential, where we don't get stuck or pigeonholed in an answer that we might forget how to explain or how to present. The world is not all black and white, and for those who it is, that's on them, and if there need be the approach, we have Israel advocacy. But for the most part, we dwell in this gray area where the potential is greatest. By raising education diplomats in our Jewish day schools, on college campuses, and young leaders who are eventually going to be leading out there in the world, we're preparing them not just to defend Jewish values, but to live them authentically in an interconnected world. You see, the future of Jewish education and Israel experiences doesn't lie in building stronger walls. It lies in training skilled bridge builders. And our students, they can be those bridge builders. If we give them the diplomatic tools and the values anchored in strong Jewish values, they will succeed and will be better off. This is part and parcel of our handoff at this specific historical juncture. It's time to think and consider what a new approach might be. Israel advocacy versus education diplomacy, or perhaps a merger of the two. Let's wait and see, but let's give it a shot. For now, I want to thank you all for listening and considering what I have to share. Until next time, let's keep the conversation going. And remember, Am Yisrael Chai, it's not just a slogan, it's a way of life. Take care, everyone. From Israel, peace out.